start? Hello? Now it's okay? Should we start? Okay. So, good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to E2I Talks. My name is Aves, and I'm a recent master graduate from TU Eindhoven in Sustainable Energy Technology, and I will be your host for tonight's event. It's a pleasure that we are hosting this event for the first time in Eindhoven, and today's E2I Talk is organized by Community by Energy in collaboration with Eindhoven Innovation Café and our sponsors, Go Green Office. Our partner Eindhoven Innovation Café is a weekly informal mix and match gathering from student to CEO of a company or from startup to the mayor of the region. The aim of Eindhoven Innovation Café is to actively connect talents, ideas, and opportunities in order to fuel innovation. So before proceeding further, I would like to introduce what E2I Talk actually is. So E2I Talk stands for Energy and Entrepreneurship to Innovation Talks, and it's a new public talk event which has the ambition to gather professionals and entrepreneurs from the sustainable energy sector around one main topic. And the topic of today's E2I Talk is circular economy in energy. The goal of today's E2I Talk is to generate a challenging debate from our guest speakers, encourage networking between individuals, and also contribute to the promotion of solutions for a more sustainable world. So this will be our today's agenda for E2I Talks, and we will first start with the introduction of Community by Energy, followed by three speakers from three different sectors around one main topic of circular economy in energy. So in our today's panel, we have guest speakers from different sectors: public sector, private sector, and academia. And the speakers will present their vision and work on one topic of circular economy in energy. After the talks, we will have a brief panel discussion in which we will ask questions to our guest speakers, and at the end we will also give chance to our audience to ask a couple of questions at the end. So without further ado, I would like to introduce Claudio Gaiken, who is the Energy Community Officer. He will briefly give you an idea of who we are or what Community by Energy is. And his aim is to improve environmental and social justice for a sustainable world. And his vision is to achieving sustainable energy through multidisciplinary collaboration. So please put your hands together for Claudio Gaiken.
Goede. Is the mic working? Hello, hello. But actually, yeah. It's working? Working? Like this, right? Goedenavond iedereen. So I don't speak Dutch, but well, I tried at least. I think accent-wise, the Dutch people generally say it's all right. Maar ik spreek geen Nederlands, so I will continue in English. So I'm the co-founder of the Energy community, working for Energy, and I really am glad to be here to introduce you to this E2I talk. First, just to give a few words, E2I, when we had to come up with a name for the event, this event has not been hosted here for the first time. We had several of those in different cities in Europe. And E2I stands for, I don't know if you ever thought about what it could be. I give you 1 second just to think about it. Maybe some guess? Entrepreneurship, energy? Very, very good, yeah. Entrepreneurship, energy to innovation. So that's our motto here. And as Awais brilliantly introduced, it is basically trying to connect different stakeholders coming from the public sector as well as the private sector and policymakers. So we aim with the community to combine a multidisciplinary group of people. So that's why I'm also very glad to be partnering up with this amazing location that really tries to fuel innovation for better ideas, opportunities, and people. So we have an amazing location that is standing for this, and we think of bringing sustainable energy thought leadership. So we want to be one of the main partners for this on a continuous basis. So today is just one bit within a longer partnership. As well as I'm really happy to have these amazing speakers that really show that they come from so many different sectors. We have like consultancies, real estate, and the public sector. And so I think it's amazing to see these different point of views. Now, I'm very passionate about the circular economy. Why is that? I think in general, if you think about the difference between the frequency we talk about climate change and circular economy, you will, I think, agree with me that climate change has been kind of overwhelmingly seen as more important. I really believe climate change is a big, huge problem that we need to solve. But I think the circular economy is actually, as a concept, more holistic and more interesting, therefore, for us to think about, not to lose things. So if we didn't have climate change, the society would still be flawed with so many problems. Just think about it. If we think about the Sustainable Development Goals, so we still would have an amazing problem with land, water, and food utilization problems and waste. So we would still have 800 million people suffering from hunger. That is the state right now in the world. And 1,800 million people having problems with basic needs such as hygiene and toilets. But the good thing is the focus on climate change is that, of course, it contributes to solve these problems too. But how can we start thinking more towards circular economic terms? What are the different dimensions we should approach it? So that we have the macro level, so GDP being the measure of success, of course, has been seen as a flawed system. We have several other indicators that many economists are thinking about. Social progress index, where, for example, Costa Rica, even though has proportionally a much worse GDP, has a much better stand in this indicator that implies that they have better education, better security, and so on, rights that are not being considered in GDP. So considering the macro level, we need to really start changing our indicators. That's one very clear goal that we should set ourselves. So that's only just to pinpoint that it's not only greenhouse gas emissions. It goes further than that. Secondly, on the innovation side, so I'm also a big fan of innovation, but I believe that often we need to be more specific. What type of innovation do we want? Let's just look at the example of plastic. Plastic was seen as this big revolutionary solution, and we started implementing it everywhere. And now suddenly plastic is seen as kind of the culprit, and why are we even using plastic? Let's remove it all. So what's the problem there? That we get innovations and we don't think about the boundary conditions. We have, unfortunately, or fortunately, as you want to see it, planetary boundaries. And we need to take them into account when we innovate. So that's one big boundary when we discuss about technological innovations. As well as on the micro level, and then maybe also related to what we are discussing today more, let's look at cobalt. Batteries are seen as the big solution to all of the intermittent renewables. or intermittent renewables are seeing as a solution, what type of materials are they using? Now suddenly we realize cobalt is mined with 55% of the sources in Congo, which is one of the most unstable countries in the world, and we cannot enforce easily child labor not to be used to mine this material. So we have several kind of dimensions that need to be addressed. Now this kind of seems like very doomy, but the good thing is that there are a lot of people thinking about solutions to these problems and thinking a bit more holistically on the macro and on the micro level. Micro level, a few things I'm very excited about is all the thinking about stopping to own things and more sharing things, as well as having People Tree, for example, is a company for clothing, considering environmental as well as social dimensions when the production of goods is done. So there's several initiatives, not only in the energy sector, as well as in many other sectors. So this is kind of the circular economy, very briefly. Maybe some things here were not new, but so what I'm here as well is to introduce you to the community and InnoEnergy. So InnoEnergy very much fits within the circular economy. Why is that? Well, we are here to basically accelerate the advance of innovation to the market and to educate leaders for sustainable energy innovations. So we do that, of course, for a more sustainable future, which is the circular economy too. Now, just to give a few examples, we have several startups, but we have several thematic fields. One thematic field is called Energy for Circular Economy. So that's quite straightforward, fitting very well as well this evening. And amongst the different dimensions we could have chosen, we chose four pillars that kind of define this field, this thematic field. One is having a transition from the conventional sources towards other sources. We have biofuels and power to gas as a second dimension. Then we have clean air is a big solution that is needed, and without leaving out as well one important bit that we're very open as well to think about how we can create better materials or usage of materials that are more better for the environment and mined in better conditions for making the whole value chain fitting better the purpose of the circular economy. So that's kind of a very general, and then we have like two specific solutions, just to mention two, but there are many more you can also just explore for yourself. One is, for example, a multi-fuel based solution where you have a camera optimization. So it's a startup we support that has different fuels, and we try to optimize with a camera system how the cement is burned. Basically, you know that cement is one of the biggest also greenhouse gas emitters. So the more you optimize the fuel, and also with biofuels, the more it's preventing environmental damage. A second one is for the pulp and paper industry, where we have I'm not an expert in pulp and paper either, but basically you have sludge forming in the production process, and this sludge is wasted most of the time, and in this case they reuse the sludge to actually run the plants with electricity and heat production. So just two very technical kind of examples as well, where I assume there are a lot of engineers in this room too that might be more excited than other people. Yeah, and then how does the community run into that? So I basically had also the idea. I was a student of the InnoEnergy education, so that's when I realized that there was a lot of potential in connecting the people in the network. So we started really with connecting people in the network, and we realized that a lot of people from outside the network would be interested in joining. And so we increased our ambitions, and now we really want to create the energy transition community. The energy transition community, what does it mean in practice? Well, if you know the TED Talks, One piece of the TED Talks are the TEDx. So TEDx are events that are also produced all over the world by volunteers. And here as well, my heads up for this event organization that has been done completely by volunteers standing behind you there. So they did an amazing job, and I just, maybe a clap is already due. So the same vision as TEDx has is to have events organized all over the world for a different purpose, though. It's not ideas worth spreading, but sustainable energy innovation. So with a different theme, but that is also as noble as ideas worth spreading. And not only is it done through these at the event level, but also digitally. So we try to combine a community that is not only meeting at specific local events and that one big annual event, but also digitally and can network digitally. So we have started very slow, so we didn't have any volunteer and any event, and then eventually now we already have more than 100 volunteers across Europe with more than 10 cities and 60 events per year. Also the main event we organize now, actually, for those that are interested, you can still join until the end of the month. And there we will, for example, as well, to just show that this event is not one in a kind, have Matthijs Wackernagel joining as the CEO of the Footprint Network. So he's, when you hear in the news maybe about how many planets are we using as Dutch people or as African people or as Americans, well, then he is basically the founder and the think tank behind these type of indicator. And so he's going to share a bit how much we are actually using and how much we should be using. And so that's a kind of a theme, sustainability and growth theme that is followed across the event. And one big thing, of course, is how to make this all sustainable. So we really have an amazing amount of talented people that we offer companies. So also, if you as an organization are interested in getting talent for your company, that's one of the ways you can get them, quality people for joining your teams. So also feel free to approach us. And yeah, without extending much more, basically I really hope you will have a good time this evening. And if you don't want to make it the last one and want to continue meeting like-minded people that really care about the future of this planet, feel free to register on the platform we got, community.energy.com. I'm guessing we will have some material around as well, or approach us, the organizers or myself. And there you can exchange discussions and follow the events that are upcoming. So thanks a lot, and let's enjoy the speakers.
All right, so thank you, Claudio, for a great insight about community by EnoEnergy, and I hope that the audience now have a better understanding of who we are and what we do. So now I would like to introduce our first speaker of tonight's E2I talk. His name is Marc Horsten, and he has a background in the building physics, and his interest for the entire building process actually allowed him to get involved in numerous innovation projects. He is now serving as a project manager at Brink, where he leads a project in collaboration with the municipality of Eindhoven and also the consortium of Impulse. In his tonight's E2I talk, Marc will show how the municipality of Eindhoven is trying to make the buildings more sustainable through implementing the concept of circular economy. So please welcome Marc Horsten.
Okay, good evening. I'm starting with an apology My English is very, very bad. I've got a low voice also. I'm going to talk about the management side of circular energy. So if you fall asleep, don't blame me. I warned you. But if you're almost asleep, please give me a sign so I will speed it up a bit. I'm going to talk a bit slowly. I'm going to look down on my notes to find the right words. So I hope you will understand what my presentation is about. Presentation is okay by me, but in English, like I said, it's a bit more difficult. Enough apologies, okay? So, Marc Horsten, yes, I'm a senior manager. That's my official function at Brink Group. But during 2 days a week, I'm a program manager for the SVGG, that's Dutch, for Slim Verduurzame Gemeentelijke Gebouwen. And in English, it's some kind of like smart sustainability of municipality buildings, like this. It starts with ambitions, I guess. Any goal you like to achieve, you have to have ambitions. The red color is mainly for the municipality of Eindhoven, and green is Impulse. Impulse is the contractor. Eindhoven is the client. And the client in this case has an ambition to be an energy neutral city in around 2045. Not only being an energy neutral city, but also improving the quality of life, not only for the council and the mayor, but for all citizens, of course, in Eindhoven. It also believes that breaking the traditional pattern, you could say, the traditional contractor pattern, is part of, not the only key of the problem, a part of the key to solve this problem. On the other side, the private sector, which I'm working for, has the ambition to use the chain collaboration in order to continue its business. We like to earn money, not only for our stakeholders, but we like to earn money for several years. So we got a long-term ambition on that point. You already falling asleep or not? Okay. It's better. Impulse also believes that sustainability and circularity must be part of your core business. It's not an hype anymore. It just has to be incorporated in your strategy as a private sector company. On this basis, the municipality of Eindhoven has shown some guts to say that they cannot solve this problem alone. We have to collaborate. We have to find partners to help us achieve the goals we've stated. So they started a process of finding a partner. They invited the market to maintain their buildings on a smarter way. They invited the market to bring up ideas for more sustainability, for a better quality of life, for flexibility in their building. So that had to take some guts, I think, of the municipality to produce or formulate such kind of invitation. The core of that approach had to be systematically. It is an approach in which seven buildings in the city center of Eindhoven are the scope of the program. It had to be a cooperation. It had to be flexible, on the basis of openness. It not just had to be only about energy consumption or energy reduction. It not only had to be about technology. It had to be also about improving quality of life, like I said. So a program was formed, a program was defined. It was a process of a lot of dialogue. At the beginning of the process, Eindhoven was also looking for the right way to find the right partner for the goals they have set. Some characteristics of the programs. The municipality early stated that the principles of the natural step had to be followed. It had to be a balanced business case. A lot of money is involved. The total budget for maintenance and investments in buildings was laid out on the table, so to speak. So it was a long-term commitment for about 10 years. The total budget was about 65 million euros. So in short, it had to be an integrated and systematic improvement of the sustainability instead of separate actions, which was the method they used before. The tendering process, I was not involved with that process, but it was very long. It took about 3 years, dus from the start of inviting the market until contract close, 3 years. Many companies showed their interest. Many adjustments were made during those 3 years. But finally there was one consortium, Impulse, who came out as, well, with the best offer, you can say. We promised a lot of things to the municipality. We promised that we would make those 7 buildings and the surrounding area within the scope, that it would be 50% of energy neutral in 2027. We promised that we would do that user focused. The appreciation of the users of the buildings should score a 7.5 on comfort. To give you an idea, we've made a survey last year and we scored a 5.8. So it will be quite simple to improve 5.8, but 7.5, it's really well, a relatively high standard we promised to get. We promised to maximize the reuse of materials according to the natural step principles. Savings of waters. We are going to add green and biodiversity to the areas. Now, and so on, and so on, and so on. There are also some soft goals we're going to achieve. Among others, 10% social return. So we are going to prove that we have invested 10% of our total budget on labor to people who have a certain distance to the labor market. I hope you understand what that means. Social return. So we promised a lot. But how are we going to do it? How will we organize it? I just skipped one, not. Yes, oh sorry. Oh, like this. We have to do it together. We have to team up. Equal responsibility, equal commitment. So we introduced the alliance model, an organizational model which is not often used in these kind of building environment projects. So doing it together is one of the themes you will see throughout the 10 years we will work on this program. But of course there is a very thick contract based on this. So we have some business agreements, as to say. Some principles which we found to be necessary to achieve the level of circularity and the level of sustainability we desired. There is an executive committee formed by both parties. We have a method we called shoulder to shoulder, schouder aan schouder. So every project manager on the client side is accompanied by a project manager on the contract side, and vice versa. If we have a sustainability consultant on the one side, there is a similar sustainability consultant on the other side. And they both work on the same project, they both work on the same subjects. So there is the level of equality which I mentioned before. Everybody follows the code of conduct. About this time, I think there are about maybe 70 to 80 people working directly on the program. If you want to do that for 10 years long, you have to have some agreements, how you approach each other. You give each other a positive feedback, not negative, and that's those kind of agreements. And one very important principle is that every problem we are faced with, every issue we are facing, is solved within the boundaries of the business case. So we got a budget who is based on a 10-year duration of the program. If it is a financial issue, if it is an other issue, we have to keep it within the boundaries of the business case. Still not asleep? Okay. How do we manage the program? By not managing it as a project. Project is very detailed, a detailed defined budget, a detailed defined phasing plan, a detailed defined output. So we're managing it as a program, sort of a multi-project, consisting of projects who deliver facilities, who deliver concrete and steel, so to say, but also project on the side of business change, much more softer, and at the end I will conclude that's the most difficult side of the program. Pouring concrete isn't that hard. Installing HVAC systems is also done several years, but the change management side is something which needs a lot of energy. So we run it as a program. We got again too fast, I guess. Yes. We got a set of about 41 key performance indicators which we monitor on a yearly basis. We've divided them into several teams, so you can understand that key performance indicators such as energy, we'll see that at the end of the contract we will achieve the 50% energy neutrality. But comfort, as I stated, the appreciation of the people working in the buildings will have to be at a level of 7.5. So that's one of the tools how we manage the program. Mainly because of the governance, we will unfortunately perhaps need contracts, like in the form of purchase orders. So the traditional client contractor purchase order is still there. And that's mainly because of the, like I said, the governance of the municipality. But we're only ordering, or we're only getting the order when we have defined the project and its outcomes for 100%. Besides those three methods I've mentioned above, we got some other tools available. We're creating several different living labs. I will show you one later on. So we're testing solutions we come up with or brought into by other parties outside of the program. We're teaching our people, not only at the private sector or on the private side, but also at the municipality side, the principles of the natural steps. And we got, and I Google Translate krachtvoersessies, but I couldn't find the right English word for it. It's like standing on on a zeepkist. That's everyone understands a zeepkist. So we got small groups which are interested in a subject we defined, and we're inviting them to come up with clever ideas to bring innovation to our program. We are organizing that about 2 or 3 times a year. So krachtvoersessies, that's what it's called. Okay, enough of the management side, perhaps. Some result. No, excuse me. Yeah? No? Okay. Yes. Some results so far. This is one of the, well, this is actually the first project we completed. It's called the Stadhuistoren, Town Hall Tower. The reuse of material is, well, you can see it on several places. We reused interior doors for side walls. We have reused tube lights, which have been pimped, so to say, by a social workplace, and we installed them in other places. We have reused perforated steel ceiling panels for acoustic absorption, for improving the acoustic climate. And we've used the mineral wool ceiling panels for thermal insulation of the cladding. These are only some practical or examples. But there's many more. We are able now to monitor energy and comfort real time. We installed a lot of smart devices into the project, and we're nearly there to show them real time on any kind of monitors you want. We have some smart climate sealing, so by placing the user central, like I said, we have added devices so they can control their own environment by altering lighting, by altering thermal climate, etc. We have used an eBay, a marketplace, for reuse of materials like radiators and all kind of installational components we couldn't reuse in the town hall tower itself, and we've sold them to whoever thought they could use them. And we improved the energy performance of the building, several labels from G to a triple plus. We have book progress. We're about 2 years on our way, and well, not surprisingly, we created some exposure with our project. We were even on the, I'm not sure if here, on the 8 uur journaal, on the main news program in Netherlands. So I think we're doing something which interests the market. So why is our program successful so far? I would say, like I said, we're only 2 years from start, so we got some 8 or 9 years to go. From my point of view, the conclusions I've stated here are my personal view on the program, is that it's a great mandate for us as an alliance from the city council to have the responsibility for the project of the total 10 years. It provides flexibility for us, so we can move around with the budget, like to say. We can stall it for later years, or we can bring it a year or several years earlier. And it makes it possible to use an integrated approach. We got some inspiring ambassadors. Not me. I'm really from the management side. So I need my colleagues to put energy into the program, who can think out of the box, as to say. And we got some on both sides, as well as on the Impulse side, as at the Eindhoven side. We need to communicate very intensively. We're trying to achieve as much exposure as we can outside, but there's a lot of energy necessary. We have to put a lot of energy also in communicating within our own companies or within the municipality of Eindhoven. And it has to be positive to go forward, to achieve actual results. And as a manager, I like those KPIs. That's great, percentage, and that's a tool which I, as a manager, use very often to create a sense of urgency. That thick contract I was talking about, there's a fine, a boete, if we as Impulse do not accomplish the KPIs every year. So there's a business side also to the KPIs, which makes the program go further. Okay, only 2 slides left, so no worries. This time we are at a momentum to look back on the lessons we've learned, and of course to use those lessons to improve the program for the coming years. Like I said, about 50 to 100 people are working directly on the program, and it's very easy to fall back to traditional methods. So that's what I'm talking about, the energy we have to put in on to get the right set of mind of all those people who work on the program. Not because I'm a program manager, but the resources for program managers, for program management, are underestimated. Bringing 2 worlds together, it not only costs a lot of energy, but it costs a lot of time and effort, and not only for me. Day-to-day worries dominate long-term thinking. We're often putting little fires aside. So we have to alter our program to keep in mind that we are still 8 years from the actual end of the program. And surprisingly, at least for me surprisingly, that solutions are often fairly simple, like I stated before, or the examples I've presented on very simple reuse of materials. So that's mostly the work of our inspiring ambassadors, who are still able to think out of the box in this kind of situations. And like I said at the beginning of my talk, is that the change management side of the program is the hardest, not the concrete. Not literally, of course, concrete is harder, but that's something which will probably be improved and probably will grow the coming years. Well, okay, lessons learned so far, like I said. Yeah, but it's not too, I hope it's not all too negative, the lessons I've stated here. Well, I've not only used Google to translate my presentation, I also Googled a nice last slide. We're only 2 years ahead. So a journey of 1,000 miles must begin with a single step. We're moving on step by step. Living Labs shows us that not all ideas we've come up with work. That's okay, that's fine. We'll come with other ideas, and eventually we will achieve our goals on a more sustainable building for the municipality of Eindhoven. That's it. Okay.
So, I'm not that tall. So thank you, Marc, for providing great insight about the application of circular economy in the building sector. And it was indeed an inspiring example of how you applied the concept of circular economy in one of the buildings in Eindhoven, as you mentioned about Town Hall Tower example. So now I would like to introduce our second speaker of tonight's E2I talk. His name is Maarten Schäffner, and in the past 12 years, Maarten committed himself to making construction and building processes more sustainable. And currently, he's leading one of the circular design project for the extension of the A58 highway. And he's also involved in many other carbon footprint projects in the building sector at the engineering company Witteveen Bos. In his tonight's E2I talk, Maarten will explain briefly the changing position of the energy sector within the transition from a linear to a circular economy. So please welcome Maarten Schäffner.
Working? Yeah? Okay, perfect. Let's go to the right. Okay, thank you very much. My name is Maarten Schäffner, working for engineering company Witteveen Bos. I work as a project manager in sustainability projects, especially focused on infrastructural projects. And I have a group, Carbon Neutral Design. And what we do is we make carbon footprints, we make life cycle assessments, we make strategic footprints. And I also work as a CSR manager for the company. So in the coming 15 minutes, I would like to explain a little bit more about the relation between the circular economy and the energy sector. And not the energy sector as a whole, but especially focusing on the transition towards renewable energy, so the energy transition. So we agreed with each other in 2015 in the Paris Climate Agreement to only increase by 1.5 degrees Celsius worldwide. And we translated that in the Netherlands to our national climate agreement, in which we said we have to reduce 49% carbon in 2030. And what happens at the moment, and most probably that's also the reason why we're all here, is we are focusing at the moment, all of us, on this energy transition. And that's a logic step, and that's a good step, because that's the biggest impact we can achieve in cutting this carbon. But that's the topic of this presentation. It will definitely influence the transition towards a circular economy. And I'd like to show you some examples of that. So this is just an example of a general supply chain. And we extract our materials, we transport them, and we manufacture, we transport again. we use our products, and then finally we dispose, and most of the times we generate waste. And what we see in the 1970s, we started with recycling. That's a very good thing, because that was the first moment that we started reusing our products. But the only thing with recycling is that for every time that we recycle, we still need primary resources. So for every time we recycle our bottles, our equipment, we need to extract materials from the earth. So most probably you've heard of the 10 R's developed by Professor Kramer in Utrecht, for example. And that brings a hierarchy in circular economy. So reuse, refuse, repurpose, remanufacture, and finally recycle. And that's a good thing, because of that we can close our loops. And the shorter the loops are, if we can reuse our products immediately again without adding extra energy, that's good for our goals. And the more energy that we have to add in these cycles, the worse. So recycling is sort of the end. So this is, this can be circular. So let's get a little bit deeper into this, and let's see how our current economy works. So what we do is we extract our materials. We use primary resources, and in every step of the supply chain, we also need fuel, and we need we add energy, and this energy, they are mostly based on fossil fuels. And what happens is that every step of the supply chain generates waste, and this total amount is going to cost a lot of glass this session. So this total amount of waste that is causing our problems. So this waste is causing our climate change problems, our health problems, health issues over the whole supply chain, and our resource scarcity. And I think these three are one of the biggest issues that we're going to face as humanity the coming years. So what we see from the total mass of primary resources that we use, we see that only a few of these materials, they are recyclable. We can recycle. So the rest of it are losses, and these losses, they generate waste, and this waste is causing our problems. So what we should do is, in a circular economy, we should try to recycle the total mass of new materials that we harvest from the earth, so that we come to a situation where we don't have to extract materials at all. And what we see is that, of course, we need to reuse. We have sort of a horizontal cycle in the supply chain, but what we also need to do is we need to become more sustainable in every step of the supply chain. And for example, by using renewable energy, because then we don't generate waste in every step of the cycle anymore. So if we make this possible, then So what we're seeing at the moment is that we're focusing on the energy transition, which is a good thing. And what is happening at the moment, our short-term focus at the moment is on renewable energy. We need new renewable energy techniques. We need new renewable energy products. For example, windmills, solar panels, etc. But what we also need is we need energy storage and insulation. I put them on a separate line. I could have put them on the same line, but I put them on a separate line because the impact of this is also different. I will get back to that. So what we do is we focus on the direct emissions. So for us, implementing these energy measures, it's a good thing. I work a lot for Rijkswaterstaat. Rijkswaterstaat is our government, and I do a lot of projects for them in the infrastructural sector. They have a definition for energy neutral. And energy neutral means that in the utilization phase, in the phase that the construction is there and that it is used, the construction needs to generate as much sustainable energy as it uses. So it's only focusing on this utilization phase, and it doesn't show the impact of the production, for example, for lights. So we're focusing on direct emissions. And what we see if we have local benefits. So let's see what happens with the circular economy. And so we need more renewable energy materials and products, so we need more materials. Not only that we need more materials, we need also more primary materials, because these new products, these new innovations, most of the times, they need primary materials. We have harvested from the earth, and we need more rare earth materials. And it's not only a problem with rare earth materials that they're rare, but there's also problems by, if we extract them, a lot of, for example, nuclear additional materials come up. So the impact of these materials is, environmental impact is very big. And what we also, this is sort of an assumption, but it could also be that if we look at circularity, that we have more indirect emissions. I can give a short example. I'm driving an electrical car, and so for my company, the carbon footprint goes down because I'm driving an electrical car and I'm not driving a combustion car. But that's good for us. That's good for Witteveen Bos. It's good for me. I'm feeling well. But it doesn't necessarily mean that over the whole supply chain, the carbon footprint goes down. So probably we will have also more indirect emissions. And also we're focusing on local benefits, whereas we don't look at the whole supply chain, which covers the whole earth and has possibly negative, but at least it has impact also on a global scale. I give you two simple examples. Let's go a little bit deeper into windmills. We need them for our energy transition. So what we see with windmills, every year hundreds of old windmills, they become waste. And we don't know what to do with it. Actually, it's very shocking. If you go a little bit deeper into this subject, it's really shocking. We don't know what to do with it. So the foundation of these windmills is made from concrete. That's not really the problem. The mast is made out of steel. That's not really the problem. But the blades, they are made of composites, composites like resin, like fibers and glue, and they are very hard to disassemble. So what happens at the moment is that we put it into landfills. We just bury our blades, or we burn them. Seriously, that's what's happening at the moment because of our energy transition. So, of course, universities and artists, they are working on this. So we see, for example, an artist here in Rotterdam who makes playgrounds out of these old blades. And that's a good thing, because then it gives the blade a new life cycle. People get happy of it. It's good for well-being. But this is not an end solution. It's a good solution for a temporary next step, but it's not an end solution, and especially not when hundreds of new blades come become waste every year. So here's another example of a bus stop. What we also see is the Technical University of Delft, I believe. They have sort of a new innovation where they make composite planks. What they do is they put the blades in a shredder, they make very small parts of it, they add glue with it, and then you make planks and you can reuse the planks. And now actually I'm only talking about downstream. I'm not even talking about producing it. I'm just talking about the waste that it generates, because I don't have time enough. So shouldn't we redesign these blades, right? Or these windmills? It's really important. Another example, the electrical vehicle. I mentioned it already before. And yeah, what is happening? We use a lot of rare earth elements in batteries. The initiator of this, in the first speech, he opened also with the cobalt. That's a good example. Also the lithium that is in these batteries. We use a lot of rare earth materials are needed. What we also see is that because of these batteries, there's a large increase in energy demand. And because the average energy mix in the Netherlands is still based on fossil fuels, we generate more fossil fuels and we burn more fossil fuels. So actually, this is something that probably we will solve in the future, but it's something we have to keep in mind. And if we look at the whole life cycle assessment of a car, I went a little bit into that. If we see the whole life cycle, we see positive results. Because if we consider a combustion car versus an electrical car, and considering that they both drive like a 200,000 kilometers, then the life cycle assessment, the environmental impact of the electrical car is like a 30 to 50% better than the combustion engine. So that's good. But if we just look at the production of the car, so considering both cars standing in the showroom, then the electrical car is far behind because of the production of the batteries. So there's a lot more to say about the subject, but I just want to show that still the supply chain, there's still a lot to win. Of course, there are also opportunities, and we see innovations, reuse of batteries. We see the Amsterdam Arena, where they reuse old batteries for energy storage. You see options for EVs as safety net for the grid, to stabilize the grid, because of the more sustainable energy we add to the grid, we need also to stabilize the grid. So here we've seen actually two shocking examples in which we design products which are not recyclable. And I'm not even mentioning well-being over here. It makes it even more shocking. We've heard the example of the cobalt, for example, in the first speech. For every battery that we produce, like between the 30 and 15 kilowatt hour, we need like 8 to 10 kilograms of cobalt. And 2/3 of all the cobalt in the world comes from Congo. And recent studies show that this increase in demand for batteries did not improve the well-being of the local people in Congo. But maybe that's for another presentation to get more deeper into it. So, conclusions. If we look at climate change is positively affected by both the energy transition and the circular economy. So both contribute. But rare earth elements so far are only helped by a transition towards a circular economy. So we see also negative impact if we only focusing on the energy transition. And the short-term focus of the local energy transition will affect the transition towards a circular economy. And it's also likely that developed countries like ours, or like the Netherlands, or the Western countries, will take the lead in the energy transition. That's a good thing. However, the biggest challenge will be the transition towards a circular economy afterwards, and especially on a broader scale. And this is the end of this presentation, and it's a wake-up call for, I think, for all of us, young people, designers of the future. Please consider the whole life cycle in realizing the energy transition. Thank you very much.
No, so yeah, it's open, right? So at the beginning, I mentioned that we will have a panel discussion, and that one you can ask questions from our guest speakers. So you will have time for sure. So thank you, Maarten, for providing a great insight about that. Apart from the implementation of renewable energy technologies, circular economy has to be taken into consideration in the intermediate steps for a more holistic energy transition. So now we will take a break, and when we will come back, we will have another insight about the concept of circular economy from TNO. And yeah, so we see each other in 15 minutes.
Test.
Yeah, I think so. I'll quickly check.
Hello? Hello? All right, guys. So now we will start with after the break, we will start with our third and last speaker. So her name is Marinke Wijngaard, and she is a managing director in Circular Economy and Environment Unit at TNO. And her passion is to accelerate the transition to a more sustainable world. The main objectives are optimizing value chains, improving materials footprint, reducing greenhouse emissions, and optimizing the socio-economic impact. In her tonight's E2I talk, Marinke will introduce how creation of circular economy can substantially reduce the carbon emissions and this way deliver a quarter of the Paris climate goals. So please put your hands together for Marinke Wijngaard.
Is it working? Yeah. Okay. Thank you very much for inviting me. I understood that it's not possible to ask questions to me, but I'm going to ask some questions to you. So we do it in return then. But first, I'm from TNO. And TNO started at the 1st of Jan a new unit. And that's the unit, maybe, let me see. Yeah, this is a picture, you know, huh? Like it's. Do I need? Yeah. No, it's too far, I think. Where do I need to point it? Yes. Sometimes technology is difficult. TNO, just to explain, is a knowledge institute. And we focus on several societal topics. And maybe because there are a lot of energy interested people, I understood today. Last year also, like the Energy Institute of the Netherlands merged with TNO, and so now we're also there together. So that's very interesting actually, because then also like the sustainable energy part is also merged, for example, to our environmental part. And that gives good links and also good follow-up and challenges and nice chances, I think. We are an independent institute, and where you often see us is that we like create consortia or big things together with universities, with companies, with all kind of things on those societal themes. And that's also what we do in our unit or in my unit. I'm very glad that this is also like being pointed out by our board of directors as a strategic theme, because I'm very interested in it. Maybe for me personally, I studied in Eindhoven. I think that there will be some of you or either are doing a promotion here or did study here in chemical engineering. But I started my career in sustainability and also on like emissions, air quality, environment, and also like waste projects. At that moment, like a circular economy as we call it now, was a topic where there was a lot of competition, like the advisory companies like you're in, like Witteveen Bos, but also EHV and all other Haskoning, and they're all Dutch like engineering bureaus. They really competed. They went for very low prices, and like the topic went down also in interest. Then we got, like as I see it also, like in the 10 years later, we got the cradle to cradle. And there was like a little bit, and that disappeared also. And now we have like circular economy. So what's different now than it was like 10 years ago or 20 years ago. I'm actually very glad that I'm back, because like I'm also now on the content again, and also making it happen, that it really will be a big transition. I think what's different now is that we did do a lot already, but that the big transition is that we also are closing the value chains, like you already said. And that's a real big transition, because it's not only technology, it's also about behavior, it's about law, it's about regulations, it's about standards, and it's also about people willing to do it or not. And that's very, very interesting transition, and I'm really passionate about it, that I'm part of it. But it doesn't work, sorry. Yes. Okay. My unit is one of the 19 units, and it's focusing on two themes. So we have like a circular economy part, and like circular economy is huge, so we also will have focus here. What we do here is that we have like macroeconomic models combined with LCA environmental impact models, and we calculate like a value chains and see where like either companies, governments, or big governmental organizations can push the button, and what helps and what is not helping. And so what you see, like also in the circular field, also on the sustainability, that there are a lot of people are claiming things. They say, oh, this works, or this doesn't work. And what we do is also add numbers to it and prove that it either works or not. That's one part. What we also do is we focus on the big themes also in the Netherlands, and we choose the themes where also TNO is good at, and that's infrastructure and it's buildings. But it's also on the plastics side of things, so on the chemical industry, for example, but also on the waste companies, etc. That's our focus here. We also have like environment and climate parts. What we do there is that we have big models. For example, we have some sensing in the new space equipment which went into the air. They are measuring, and we are putting those things into our models and also predict how like greenhouse gases stream in Europe or on the world, what we should do, and where also the sources are coming from, for example. But also on the air quality, like on the healthy side of things. So, for example, we have like, we measure and we characterize, for example, dust. And also with other units in TNO say what dust is dangerous for you and what is not. And what should be the standards there. For today, I'm going to focus on one part. I can tell ages here, but today I will talk about also like on the relationship between like the energy or the Paris agreements, and also how circular economy can contribute to that. And also a little bit why circular economy is important. And I started with, I will ask you a question. So what's for you the most important thing for circular economy? Where does it impact? There are no wrong answers, because there are many answers. And the question, I can also repeat the answers, but I will repeat the question. How do you think the circular economy will impact? Where will it be impacting on? You already had some answers, so there should be now.
Resources and energy management.
Yeah. That's one of the good things, and I come back to that. Because it's really on the raw materials, on the resources, on the fuels, on etc. There it impacts on. Yeah, it gives impact on. What else? Yeah, reconsidering design is definitely one which we need to do as a solution to make that happen. Yeah. 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 Yeah, yeah. Yeah. Yeah, for sure. And I have myself as well, because I went to the shop last weekend. I bought a lot of clothes, and then I came back and I said, oh no, I'm also working on the circular part. So why why I'm doing this. So, and this also, I mean, I'm busy with circular economy, so it's also like the whole like society needs to change there. Yeah, maybe yeah, this is yeah, there, there. Yes, yes. Why circular? And you already said like it's also about the raw materials, the fuels, etc. It's the security of supply, which you already mentioned, which is very important because we only have so little resources for some components left. But on the other hand, it's also the waste overload. And for example, like China is not wanting our plastics anymore. So we need to do and need to reconsider that again. So of course, don't make plastics. That's the first one. But also, if we have it, then we should do something with it. And make from like the waste maybe a new raw material. So also to close the chain again. That's one side. Another side is that it's also giving added value. And what's the added value? Now, I come back to that later. It's about jobs. It's about how you're sitting here. Maybe you will have jobs later on here as well. It is about all societal change, which is going to happen. So there is value, actually. It's also about climate change prevention. And that's where I also come back, because I believe, and also we did calculate, that like circular economy is really contributing to the Paris Act. And also we calculated, and we did do that very conservatively, 1/4 of the Paris objectives can be achieved with like only working circular. And then we're like conservative, we didn't do that alone. Also like the Finnish and I think the French and some others also calculated that, or even more. No. Yeah? Oh, yeah? Yeah. Okay. Why circular? And like this was the first. It is like about added value. And the added value is like you here can see, have we made already a report in 2013? It is about like also business being there. About we calculated like 7.3 billion euros. And also like 50,000 jobs to be created. That's really business. So we're not discussing anything that is like only nice to have. It's also from an economic point of view, need to have. And I think this is also important because there are a lot of like value chains which need to change, which also need to change in power there, because like current and also big companies who are in those value chains now, they maybe will not benefit from it, but others will. So there's really, really big change. And I believe if there's not like an accelerator also in the economic side, the social and also like the environmental side will not come. So we need to do both. So it's good that there is advantage in it. It's just my, yeah. Security of supply. You already mentioned it. And the first speaker also mentioned it, is that there are lots of elements which are being used very often. For example, in telephones, for example, in batteries. And so like the things we use very much, also ourselves. And these are limited. So they're rare materials. We need them also in the future probably. So we need to be careful with that. And that's also, there are some elements which really have, you can see that here, really small years of production left. I have to, there's surely cobalt in. I think it's, how is it called in English? Sorry? Yeah, yeah. Yeah. Antimony. Yeah. Yeah. And but even like silver is in as well here, and like the zinc is in here. So there are also elements we use or see often here are in these kind of rare materials. And here, so here you have also some. So it's lithium cobalt, which is being used often, but also gallium indium tin, which is also, for example, for the solar panels being used here. And maybe also to give you a tip of it, what we're currently working on in TNO is to see, because I really think like the energy transition is a really very, very good thing, also to reduce CO2 emissions, to reduce green gas emissions. But there is a downside of it, and that's because we will be using a lot of sustainable energy, which means that probably we will get a lot of windmills, a lot of solar panels, etc. So what we're currently looking for is not to like challenge that we don't need CO2 reduction, but to challenge like what should we do now to prevent that windmills are not being incinerated later on. And so what does that mean if we have really a big transition, a big energy transition in the world? And also, how should we do smart things now to prevent bad things later? Oh, yes. Waste overload. If we're talking to like the plastics companies and the base chemicals companies, they're not expecting that their numbers will go down. They're expecting actually that their production rates will go up. They're expecting that there is also for the future more and more plastics needed. And what that means is, for example, if you look there, and those are not our numbers, but also from the Ellen MacArthur Foundation, which also really having really interesting materials there. That for now, like if you see that there is like 500 megatons of plastics being produced, in 2050 that will even be, I think, doubled or even more. What that means is that now, like there are 5 fishes in the sea, compared to 1 bottle or 1 plastic elements. Later on, that will be 1 to 1. That's really, really an issue, and we really need to do something about it. So it's the overload which we also need to need to solve. Climate change. We did calculate in like here in the how is it called in English? Like we have when a governance starts, they make a report, they make agreements on what they're going to do the coming 4 years. What they did do is that they made like a table which they said we need to do something about the energy transition, and in the table is stated that we need to reduce like the CO2 emissions here. If I look here, it's like recycling, it's only 1. So if I look through the topics here and see the circular topics, they don't believe in circular. That's what I see. What I see now is that I'm also like involved in some of the innovation expert teams in the climate agreements in the Netherlands, is that last half year that attitude changed. So what I see is that more and more people believe that also with circular kind of things, things can be changed sustainably. And also is adding value and diminishes the CO2 emissions. But how much is it? And we made a calculation about that. Just as an introduction, I took there are a lot of things going on in circular economy. Like in the Netherlands, there is like a raw materials agreement being signed by more than 300 companies. There are like 5 transition agendas. I will tell a little bit later about this as well. And it's also in the Climate Act. Also, of course, for the EU Action Plan, there is something going on here. So there are defining legislation, there is funding, there were some more acts coming up about the sticks, for example. But also that was, you can discuss that one, but they also have some more deeper and better like legislation coming up on plastics. So there is a discussion being started. Why should you have so many plastics? That could be a good discussion. I don't know whether we will want to do something about that, but that's also a starting point for that discussion. What we also see is that like companies are coming more and more also to us, but also like the Ellen MacArthur Foundation had a lot of members. The circular economy has a lot of members. Many companies are also agreeing and do something with it. What we also notice is that a lot of companies don't know where to start. So they also like need our help there. Oh, that's too fast. Yes, it's at least working now. This is just about the Netherlands, so I don't have this about Europe yet, but that will come up for sure. But as an example, in the Netherlands we have 5 circular transition agenda. Anyone knows about that? Maybe? Okay, some of you, not that many. What we did is that like last year there were like companies, institute, university being brought together on 5 themes. And why did they choose those 5 themes? They did choose those 5 themes because these are the themes which impact like the circular economy the most. So if we do something about this, or something, if we really want to become circular, which is like the objective in 2050, which is very, very ambitious, then we need to do something on these kind of domains. Now, they went together, they made some big reports. Some are better than others, but they at least made some. For example, like the biomass and food and the plastic one are good reports where you really have also concrete specific actions in. And what we did is we looked through all the transition agendas, we put like the measures into our models, and we calculated what it could contribute to CO2 reduction. And that's of course for 2 things, because of course circular is becoming more and more important. But at this moment, energy transition is the theme and not circular. So if we could prove also that circular helps the climate change and helps like CO2 reduction, also this topic becomes more and more important and also sustainably important. Sorry? The statistics on the transition agendas, you mean? Yeah, but there is not a program yet. Yeah. So I think that's one of the problems we are facing now. So like what they did do is that they have agendas. So they work together, and I think they have good programs also to work out. So if you would implement that, then also like the circular goals can be at least half being achieved. So what is being done now is that they're now preparing for implementation. So we have currently discussions with the Ministry of Infrastructure and Water, also to help them implement, and also, and of course, then also the discussions on the climate agreements helps there. Is that, and of course, as I started, this is not the first thing we do. We already are working on sustainability, and are already, luckily, provinces are working on sustainable and circular economy. Companies are working on it. This is more how can we like change and also close the value chains and really make a big step together. That's the agenda it's about. But that does not mean that we do nothing here now. No. Yeah. 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 Yeah, but there are long-term goals. So the long-term goals in 2030, for the Netherlands at least, is to have 49% of the raw materials coming back. And you can also read that in the reports and in the agendas they set. And in 2015, it should be fully circular. Those are the goals. But we need then to do something, because otherwise we will not get there. This is just like, these are our models where we put this in. There are like euros coming out, environmental impact coming out, CO2 impact coming out. But of course, you also need to get the good stuff in. And when we use our models, and of course, we can improve much more, etc. But in general, our conclusion is that if we implement those transition agendas in the Netherlands, then in 2030 we reduce CO2 with 7.7 megatons, and in 2050 with 30 megatons. And that means that we have, like here, all quarter of the goals of Paris, which we can make, and even there is more room for improvement, because we also did do an ex-ante evaluation, which means that you evaluate what is being done in the transition agenda and that you look forward, what should we do? And what is being said there is that with the current transition agendas and the plans, we will not achieve the fully circular cycle in 2050. We're halfway if we do it. Just some concluding remarks. Reaching the current targets of circular economy policy contributes significantly to the Dutch climate goals. As I said, further quantification of the goals is still required. So then also you can put statistics on. So for example, we're also now currently working with the PBL, which also has some monitoring models, to see what we can do there, also to monitor it well, and also to have statistics in that way. And then still it's also to have wise statistics, because like in the PBL report there's being stated that, for example, for plastics we already recycle like 89%. And if you really go deeper, it's being said that there's only a small part which is really being recycled and is being put back as a product. You still can have like discussion there. Can you make it more valuable in that way? And another thing is that there is a lot being incinerated. There's a lot being burned. And like the heat which is coming off, they also like allocated that to like recycling and reuse. So it's also about those kind of things that you that you need to have a wise target, a wise objective there. The impact, that's another thing. Maybe this relation between energy transition and circular economy requires close attention, because energy transition requires lots of materials in that way. And that does not mean that we don't need to do the energy transition, because we need to, but we need to do it wisely. Less material production also lowers energy demand in that way. And CO2 footprints of materials lower by increasing contribution of renewable energy. So they interact with each other. So if you say now, for example, on that objective side, for example, I want to reduce like 10 megatons, then like that 10 megaton will be different in 5 years if you are more using sustainable energy for that. And so that also like interacts with each other. And what is good is that there is renewed attention for economic and social aspects also and on impacts. And I think that's very important, because only technology change will not help us here. That was it.
Hello. Okay. So yeah, you can ask questions in the mic. We will have one volunteer who will be running around with the mic. So for this segment, I would like to invite my friend who will facilitate this segment. So please welcome David.
Hello, everyone, and thank you for being here. Also, thank you for the speakers for the really insightful conversations we've had. For the panel discussion, I want to invite the speakers to sit down. Here I see they're organizing the chairs now. So I'd like to invite you to the stage again, please. Yeah, is it okay now? Is it okay now? Yeah. Okay. So, well, I actually had several questions for the panel discussion, but I've seen that the public is really, really eager to ask many questions, so I'll limit my participation to be small, with only one question at the beginning, to let the public interact more. And I wanted to ask you all at the beginning, one of the things that many people are aware of now with the energy transition is the costs that this can bear. And as we have seen also, implementing different new circular economy strategies can also bear big costs in the system. So how do you see, both at a local level, for instance with buildings, in industries, and at a government level, what you can do to make people notice that there can be a benefit, both implementing different technologies for the energy transition and strategies for its circular economy without bearing big costs and making this completely unsustainable? So I would like to know who would like to start with this question, or if it was clear. Mike? Oh, yeah, Mike. Sorry.
Yeah, I think, yeah, is it working? Yeah.
Yeah,
I
it is
think,
working.
yeah, everything starts with awareness. And I'm actually a little bit disappointed if I speak to a lot of clients and I show them and I ask them what is the question behind their question, right? That's what we always should do. If we get a question as an engineering company, why are you asking us this question? And now we've got a lot of energy questions coming towards us. And then I'm asking this question, why are you asking this? And what is the idea behind it? Yeah, we want to be energy neutral. And the awareness is for the reason why they're asking this. It's not yet really there within these organizations. So we are facing a project manager, which is part of an organization, who is only responsible for his project. So that's really a problem. And of course they are trying, but there's not really a motivation for these changes that we really need to make. So maybe it also has to do, while I'm talking, is maybe the structure behind it, right? Focusing on one thing is what we're good at, and that's the energy transition at the moment. But if you would like to focus on the whole supply chain, then definitely we need more than just two parties and one project.
Okay, thank you for your answer.
Maybe to add, also like in my speech, I think, of course, circular economy is broader and bigger than only energy transition, but it helps, and it really helps a lot. And I think when that energy transition is so like on the topic, on the agenda, we should add circular economy to that because it helps also the CO2 impact. What I believe is that change will not change if there is like if there is not a benefit for the people or for the parties. And I think we need to look to the change and see how we can change that. And there is not a general answer to that. It depends upon the chain. But we know for sure also that like in the change, like parties will change roles there. The change will not be the same. And that's, I think, the most important thing and also the most important change to make that happen. For implementation and accelerating it, I believe in doing big stuff. Not only doing small projects, little projects, but also for the Netherlands and in Europe, really big initiatives where we put lots of parties together and really make also it happen. And then I fully agree with you, like awareness is also very important there, also on the consumer level.
Awareness and commitment. And that's why I also liked the speech of the city of Eindhoven, because I think we should not have like these short projects where we want immediate results. Maybe we should have long-term programs instead of projects where we are really committed. And in the tendering process, the contracting phase, you tender companies that are really committed to the job. Maybe that's a hub to you.
I'm not sure what your question was, but I've heard the word change about 10 times, I guess. Like I said in my presentation, that's the part which needs the most effort of me and my colleagues. Change will come, I'm sure. There is going to be some kind of sense of urgency that we have to do things different. I don't mean that we just have to wait and see. Just wait until we don't have any fossil fuels or the material below, which is out of stock in 1 or 2 years. So perhaps a call out to you. I'm facing you now at this moment. I can see I'm a bit older than all of you. I was a student. I guess you're a lot of students here. No? Well, a lot of other. So I was a student about 20 years ago. So don't count on me. I'm 50 years old. I'm retiring, not in 1 year, perhaps in 15 or 20 years. We're a bit stuck in traditional ways. So I like you to challenge us. You know, you are future CFOs and CEOs and directors and managers and what not. So keep challenging us, my generation, who are now at the position to control budgets, to well, hopefully initiate some change. But it's going to be a great effort. But the sense of urgency is coming for some kind of, for some subjects. It's already here. Technology also will arrive. As we speak now, we're cleaning up oceans from plastics, and you know, in 1 year or 2 years, we got more of those machines. So we must take it step by step, but we'll get there. And I'm sure we as mankind will solve the problems we're facing right now.
Thank you for your words.
That's not the answer on your question, is it? Or
Well, it was a really good insight. Thank you.
it was a good answer. Yeah.
Yeah, it was a good answer, and thank you.
Good presentation.
And what I hear with the words you three say is that this is a really big matter of perception and awareness of the people, and seeing the projects that are going through energy transition as projects rather than having this big picture of having programs. So there's definitely a big lack of awareness of general people. Maybe we here in this public know more of circular economy than the average person in the Netherlands, for instance, or the world, but it's definitely a matter of awareness. So I would like to open now the discussion to see if the public has questions for the speakers. I see many hands, which is fantastic. So I'll start here because you were the first one to raise your hand. So please say your name and give us your question.
Hi, good evening.
It's on.
Yeah. Good evening, and thank you for the presentations and the talks. My question is, I'll come directly to the point. Oh, yeah. I'm Vamsi. I'm doing my master's in TU Delft in solar energy and electric mobility. And the reason I'm here is I'm looking for an interesting topic for my master thesis in energy and circular economy, and which makes perfect sense. The question that I had been having throughout this evening was, the way resources are used in developed countries in Europe and North America is different from the way resources are used in Asia, and Africa, and Latin America. So do you think this difference in the way resources are used and how they are now being remanaged to be more efficient. The difference in use here and there. Do you think you can take your expertise there, or you can learn something from there? Because let's say the way buildings are built, or the way waste is managed, or the way energy is generated, there is a big difference both technologically and even culturally. So what kind of synergy do you see? Like, what kind of intersection of learnings? Is there any other way in which you can see of how an interaction can happen here and there, vis-a-vis?
It's more on their field, I guess. But can you first explain what are the differences in using materials in, well, like Europe and Asia, from your point of view? You say they're different.
Yeah, well, I definitely see there are differences. But then, how does a circular economy, the principles would work? Do you think would they work differently here in Europe and differently in Asia?
At least I think the most important thing is transparency. So now we have supply chains and we have no clue. If you buy a phone, you have no clue whether it's from India, whether it's from China. So how could you ever manage any well-being issues, sustainability? Nobody can check it. So I think, yeah, that's the most important thing. I think we have to close loops. We have to make them transparent. Of course, we need the knowledge of everybody. We can learn from each other, but we need to make it transparent. And from that point on, definitely we can improve the supply chain. But if you ask Apple about their factories, they close doors. And they're not telling anything. So that's the problem. But still, we are all buying iPhones.
True, and we can also learn something there, which is very positive, I would say, because I think in the Western world, we use too much. We use far too much. And if you look like for maybe third world countries or maybe even second world countries, what you see there, I traveled myself a lot, is that they reuse everything. And I really like that. So it's also to learn from that, how they are doing that, what's the also the business model behind it. Because there are a lot of business models, so that's a flashlight. There are also been other business models being used there, which I can imagine, which we could also reuse here again. And so that's another topic, I would say.
Yeah, well, it seems there are differences between different parts of the world with circular economy. Thank you for your question. Okay, you raise your hand first, please.
Start my question by a remark. Well, actually, if we don't buy, the economy will not grow by 3%, which is the basis of the whole economical system we have. And everybody knows that 3% growth target makes the economy, I mean, if something grows by 3%, it's a nonlinear system. And every nonlinear system has a saturation point. So my question is actually, is it the time that we have to question actually the fundamentals of our civilization? Because like 1,000 years ago, right, Incas discovered biochar, and there actually the resources were even more surplus than our time, but the guys actually were using biochar so that the nutrients in the soil were not going away. So I think the awareness indeed was a very important point, but isn't it the time to question our fundamentals? That this kind of waste economy, is it really sustainable?
I think it's time to discuss. I think it's also economy, like the Kate Ridley one. So she's also saying that we should challenge and that we should say, and I agree with her. I do not fully agree with her models behind it, but I agree with you that we should have the discussion coming up to do that. And also when we redesign the change, there will be different business model, there will be different economics in, and maybe there will also be not only economics, like also having not yet the impact or reuse or put contribution to the society might become more important also. and apart from only money. And also that is also a thing which we need to take into account, I think.
I think it's a very good question, and it's really a problem also for myself. We're addicted to economic growth, and if you project it on yourself, we are all addicted to economic growth. And of course, sometimes I think if everybody would slow down a little bit, because if your neighbor buys an iPhone, you want it too. Yeah, it's collective thinking, but you need to stand very strong in your shoes if you are going on the we say on the high in a small house, living in a small house, because the whole, it's what you're saying, the whole system is based on this system, and it's even very hard to get out. It's very hard. But yeah, I really think we should ask these questions, and we should have the guts to do that. But then you are really touching the foundation of everything. And that's very dangerous, and it's also it's also a political thing. It's a big question you're asking. But that's really a big question.
Yeah, thank you for your question. Well, there are definitely many problems, and not only the economic growth, but the population growth is also threatening these things, because the more people, the more economy and the more consumption we usually have. So the next question, you were the next one who raised your hand. Can you pass through the microphone, please? Okay, next to you.
Okay. Hi, I'm Diana. I am a freelance sustainability consultant, and that's a personal and professional passion. And it's really nice to see your talk today. And I'm actually adding up to your question because you're working on research and circular economy principles. And what or how do you envision the circular economy being implemented? Is there some kind of work or research by or something that you see to try to make this concept work with the setup that we have now? Because the setup that we have now is business as usual, and there is an explanation why we focus on energy transition, because we can keep business as usual doing that. So it's very easy, and actually we're just changing the energy source, but we're not necessarily changing to a more sustainable society, because if we keep this setup, it's still the same. So is there some kind of work or some kind of research to try to understand how we can include companies or try to change this logic a little bit?
There probably is, but then I need to go back to my experts. So I'm very sure there is. I know that there is, like, we're currently working on also like a big consortium where we have also the policy side of these kind of things coming together. So there are a lot of, and that's very interesting, because then like the gamma sciences come together with beta and alpha sciences. That's very, very interesting. And so we bring together there are like different answers to your question, I think. And also when you look, for example, in the social sciences, there are like economic ways of answering the question. There are like more social ways of answering your questions. There are more legal ways of answering your questions. There are more technological ways to answer your questions. So I think there will be really questions, but they're not yet together yet. That's what I've seen. And there are some universities we are doing really research, also on the transition side of things, and on the model side of things. Nijmegen, for example, or Utrecht, or like also in Sweden and in Denmark and Finland, etc. So there are answers, but they, to my experience in the Netherlands, they did not yet fully come together. And I think like the answer to your question is in the integration of all the components there.
But then how do you see circular economy being implemented in this setup?
Then I don't understand your question, I think. Help me.
Because your presentation was about implementing circular economy principles because this would lead to a sink in the CO2 emissions. But then you need to implement this, and this is a logic that is not possible in this setup. So how is this?
But why wouldn't it be possible in the setup?
Because if you're extracting more and more and using more and more.
Okay, in that way.
Yes.
Okay. Yeah.
Sorry, can you use the mic? So we're transmitting live as well.
I think
Thank
we
you.
have to take small steps, and I don't think we are going to change the whole system in one way. And we need a lot of people and a lot of countries and a lot of politicians to change it. But the positive thing is, I see a lot of opportunities for implementation. And of course, this we present as sort of the big picture. But in every research, we need universities. But in my work as an engineer, I see so many options. I saw in my neighbor's presentation, I saw that there needs to be a change in, how do you call it? A change in the way of thinking. Well, we presented something about the materials and the life cycles, but it's even there's much more than that. For example, I was very surprised that within engineering companies, we immediately start calculating. So we want figures. She mentioned, I want the figures. But then we concentrated a little bit, and I checked our design process. How do our designers think? How do they think? How do they design a road? How do they do it? And there's so much to win, because how do they design it? They think of cost, they think of techniques, they think of permits, they think of, they're not thinking of recycling, life cycle, circular economy, not at all. So within our company, there's so much to win, even before we know the materials that we're going to use to optimize them and to make life cycle assessments. So, yeah.
And maybe to add to that, also on the education part of things, there is not like a study where you can like study the full circle design. So and that needs to happen on all levels. So it's also on the universities, on the higher education, on the middle education as well, and also to put there the awareness, but also the knowledge there that we can make that happen. And I fully agree with you. Also that you need to start at different levels, and my personally opinion is that you should start with big chunks, because otherwise it's then you really have something which you can prove, which you can have a success, and then go further. But step by step.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. We have several questions for the public, so I'm going to go with the next one. It's you with the black shirt.
Hello, I'm Sandeep. Okay, I go to my question. Why is circular economy important? Because we are speaking about circular economy and how to solve it, but why is it important in the first place?
Shall I try
That's a really big
to
question.
think of an answer? Well, I was triggered by the presentation that you look back several years on what's different now. Why is it called circular economy now? And you had some other terms by now several years ago. I think we're only exploring, ways to improve life, to make this world also a good place for younger generations, for our children. So it's not only searching for why do we need circular economy, just give it another name. It doesn't matter. We're taking it step by step. We're seeing that fossil fuel is running out of stock, and other materials. We see plastics floating in oceans, and so we're constantly looking for solutions to, perhaps clean up the garbage we have made. Again, perhaps elder generations to make sure that future for younger generations is still hopeful, is still positive. So I'm not that interested in how do we implement circular economy. If you ask 3 other experts, they probably have also some kind of view or some kind of vision on circular economy. So I'm more like we're taking it step by step, showing that also small improvements have benefits. And well, if you got 1 billion small improvements, well, you're quite goed bezig, zeg je dat?
Thank you.
Good
Thank
busy.
you. Thank you, Mark. And
I think in the end, everything is circular. It is. But in 1800, we had only 1 billion people living in this world. So there was enough space. So of course, our communities, they live like a circular economy. But now we're probably in 2030, we're facing like, 8 to 9 billion people in this world. So we invented all kinds of innovations. For example, in 1800, the sewer was like a natural system. And the nature, they cleaned our sanitation, for example. And so we needed chemical sanitation for more people. So what we see is that with so many people in this country, on this planet, we are producing too much waste. And this affects our health, and it affects the health of our children. And that's why we need a circular economy.
yeah, you may ask a question. Yes.
Do you think you need circular economy? I'm 48, I told you. You're much younger.
My opinion is, circular economy could be a strategy, but there should also be like other strategies to tackle the future. Because the way we are progressing right now, we have hit so many boundaries and there is no going back. Then like the future is already desolate to me. So it's like, how do I prepare for the desolate future? And I'll be like focusing on these things because we obviously want to have a good life. So we are focusing on like the other thing and missing out the other one. So like how important is circular economy? How important is the other thing to prepare for the desolate future?
Yeah. Thank you. We have time for 2 more questions, and if there are more following questions, you can all do them in the networking session we have afterwards. So I saw that you were raising your hand since a long time ago, so go on with your question.
Well, yeah, I'll try to make it short. Hi, my name is Kofi Nicholson. I am a business trainer and educational specialist or learning specialist, and I'm extremely interested in sustainability and energy, and I'm just here as my own personal development on what parts that I could play long term on this global problem. Shortly, there's a lot of things I wanted to ask, but what I'm hearing and what I want to focus on, and it's a question that I want to ask all 3 of y'all, I'm hearing core skills that are missing to implement anything that y'all want to do. And I'm hearing awareness, I'm hearing small steps, which equals baby steps, which I could appreciate because you have to walk before you crawl. I hear, and it's the mindset.
Sorry, can you
So my question
have your microphone closer to you?
Sorry, how
Yes.
are you implementing it in your country in present day, the now, and not the future on changing minds? Because like I said, the basic skills that all of y'all are missing, or not all of y'all, all of us, which I feel are quite easy to solve, is the mindset. You use things as values, whether it's a country, whether it's just the Netherlands, or whether it's global. How are you trying to change that in your organization as an individual on any leadership skill? Because y'all are all leaders or experts in your own field. And it's more of a personal question.
Okay, personal answer then. No, I've already talked to some people. I've mentioned I don't have green fingers. I told it. I'm a manager. I've studied building physics. I've performed measurements. I look how concrete is made. You know, that's me.
Yeah, but you have values.
Yes.
Everyone have values.
I'm not finished
Yeah,
yet. Okay. So what I experience now, since I'm program manager of this program, which now should achieve some kind of sustainability on a very small scale, actually, I'm inspired by people around me. Like I said, we have ambassadors in our program. Of first, I think, well, they are a bit, you know, a bit, how do you call it, a bit zweverig, a bit, you know, wild ideas, but not implementing anything. Well, now I experience that those people actually inspire other people. Only a small part of the vision or the ambitions of the ambassadors is spread. So I'm also inspired by those people. I don't have any solar panels on my home yet, but you know, in small steps I do talk with my children about my work and what we achieve, and I do listen to people who work in the town hall tower, and you know, I'm using my influence, I'm using my position to move budgets, you know, more to, but wait, if we want to achieve 7.5 on comfort for quality of working, well, then I'm in a position to move some budgets to that, to move some budgets to solar panels or whatever. So it's for me personal. You asked for a personal answer. I need to be inspired by my surroundings, and that's happening for me right now. And yes, baby steps for me, but with, you know, about 50 to 60 people in this program, we'll get there. We're making progress. Okay.
Good luck. I mean, it all comes from leadership, eh? That will, determination, and courage to take steps where people, from what I'm hearing, it's kind of like, well, we have an idea, but we have to get the government or businesses on plan. And that's what I'm saying. You can't change things overnight, as I forgot your name, one of the speakers had said. But my point is, how are you starting it in your own backyard? And like I said, the things that I hear from all of you speaking, whether it's internally or globally, is the values, the ethics, the mindset, where some are ready but others are not. Change is possible, but baby steps. Where is that middle ground, and how are you trying to implement that on sustainability in your company with the energy? So.
Maybe because in my unit in TNO, there are very motivated people also for this topic. So I don't need to motivate these people myself, but I can arrange budgets also to make this happen. For me personally, it was quite a personal thing that I choose to do this job, actually. Because there are other units in TNO as well, and maybe I could have gone for those as well, but I really choose to do this one, because this is so close to my heart, and I think I can make also a change here. And that's one of my personal stuff where I say, no, I should choose this. This is close to my heart, and here I can not only make maybe a business step, but I can also a societal step here. Or accelerate it, or to help it accelerate it in that way.
Well, thank you very much. We'll go on with a different question. I saw you answering with yeah, it's the last question. Sorry for all the other people who have questions. Okay, two more. This one and this one. Last one.
Oh, hello. My name is Armel. I work at Inno Energy, so I'm quite concerned about energy and also innovation, but also circular economy. And my first question would be for Bart. You mentioned the alliance principle with which you work with the gemeente Eindhoven. And my question would be, it seems very good as a principle, but how would you imagine this concept working with company? Because as you said, and as you mentioned as well, long-term is quite important for circular economy, and also scale-up project, as you mentioned as well in your talk, are also a key element. But so how can you imagine that with the private sector? I can imagine it with the public institutions, but have you any experience in the private sector? That's the first question.
The private sector is a business. We have to earn money, like I said. So this company we've started, Impulse BV, is a consortium of 5 companies who all have in their own way the ambition or the vision that sustainability contributes to the continuity of their business. So in our company and the other consortium partners, there are also those ambassadors, those visionary people who say, well, we need to incorporate this into our business model some kind of way to help society, to help future generations, but also to generate money. If we don't generate money, if we don't make profits on projects or programs like this, it's going to end. We're not going to fulfill our contract the coming 8 years.
I agree, but you take the position of a service provider and you don't take the position of the client. Do you have many clients being private entities? And that's more the question, because I can imagine that it is easy to have a long-term commitment. You need a huge budget. For a huge budget, you need a long-term commitment, so you need a stable CEO, you need a stable shareholding. So it's very difficult to imagine a 10-year business plan for a private entity, while I think it's difficult unless you take the stock option companies. But if you want to start, we need to start also on a small scale. So a group of companies, maybe in one city hall, in a city, to help them to become circular. And here I have difficulties to motivate people or companies to go into a circular economy, because they don't have the financial strength to go for a project of 10 years, for instance. And that seems to me very difficult, especially if you want to scale up the program to have it viable on an economical point of view.
Well, I'm not quite sure if I understand your question, but one of the goals of this program is to be visible for the whole community. As I stated in my presentation, the municipality of Eindhoven wants to be the lightning example. Well, a joke, you know, Philips Eindhoven. So hopefully, and we're only just two years ahead, it will affect companies. I've already are building my network around me, and there are some initiatives here in Eindhoven who are putting a lot of effort in the same kind of transition, long-term transition for private companies. There are a lot of studies made by the municipality, by a survey they have done for how many solar panels can we place on the roofs of private buildings there. So it's, you talked about leadership. In this example, Eindhoven is showing his leadership for motivating his inhabitants, also private companies, to follow the good example. Sorry. I'm convinced that there will be new business models. The big companies will incorporate new economies, circular economies, into their business. So that will not happen overnight. We're only 2 years from the 10 years of contract, so it's more like a generation, perhaps, which will provide change, I guess.
Well, thank you for a question. I'm going to go with the next one because we cut in time, short in time, and it's for you with the green shirt. Can someone give her the microphone, please? Yeah, it's you. Yeah. Well, we need a mic. There it is.
So, what I really believe is that it doesn't matter when it's public or a business or whatever. Every organization depends on people and what they believe in and what their values are. I understand that companies have a much not long term, but I believe that consumers are more and more aware and conscious of the damage also companies can do, and they are enforcing also companies to rethink their business. So in that sense, they are really asking them to behave more ethical in their businesses, and so even clients can have power over businesses in this case. What I didn't really had a question, but I wanted to inspire you all, if you are very interested in this topic, that there is in the Van Abbe Museum, there is a program which is called Werksalon, and there is a group that calls itself the Groene Gasten. It means the green guests, and they are researching also this topic with through art, and in a philosophical way, and in an ethical way, a psychological way, but through art. And it's also very interesting. So if you have interest, you can also look into this program to the Van Abbe Museum in Eindhoven. So it's more like, inspiring the people who are interested in these kind of things.
Okay, thank you for invitation. I was told we have time for one more question. Okay, Giorgio.
Thanks. Yeah, first of all, thank you very much for the presentation. Super interesting. I want to be a bit provocative. Closer. Okay. Sorry. Yeah, I want to be a bit provocative because I think 70% of the faces I know in here come from a very technical background, let's say. And I think we all agree that let's say commercial or like business related solutions to this kind of sustainability issues are what we need and are necessary. And we also tend to think that they are like the cool part of what we can do about this. But I think even the strongest proponents of like free markets know that like free markets are like a great tool, but they consistently fail in a couple of situations: monopolies and externalities. And sustainability is like I think the biggest example we have of like an issue which deals with externalities. Because when we pollute like our ecosystems and so on, that's something no individual or company pays for, or even government. It's something that everybody will have to pay for in the future. So my provocative question is like, do you think that purely commercial solutions or like these kind of small initiatives, which I totally agree are necessary, are enough to solve these issues? Or do you think we are kind of ignoring the elephant in the room, which is we as like a collective group of people and as individuals, we make day by day choices which are completely flawed because we don't take into account the huge externalities we are creating. And unless we have a clear political system which forces us to sort of internalize these externalities in our choices, we can sort of reduce the size of the problem a bit, but we are only addressing really like drops in the ocean. It's a question. It's not like.
I think the question was how can these small initiatives mold the system of circular economy, how they impact, or do these small initiatives alone by themselves go on and flow with the circular economy, or do bigger impacts have to be thought about to actually move it on? I think that was the question, right, Giorgio? Okay.
I think we need to act on all levels. And when I started with this subject 10 years ago, I was really, I thought we need more bottom-up, right? We need more local initiatives. We need to act. And sometimes nowadays it disappoints me a little bit that I found out that the biggest impact that we can make is really on a political level. By closing our nuclear power or closing our coal industry. And yeah, it's very hard to reach that as just a burger, a civilian. So yeah, I think for everybody, his personal impact is different. And if you're the president of a country or if you're Donald Trump, definitely your impact is massive. Yeah, I also meet engineers within our company, and they come towards me and they say, so Maarten, please tell me, how can I help? How can I contribute? But they are like construction engineers only focusing on a specific type of concrete. And then I'm telling them, even for you, although it's harder for you, but even for you, there's a width where you can make the change. You can, we need your specialty at that level. So find out what is your, so I think we need to act on all levels. Yeah. Maybe that answers your question a little bit.
Okay, thank you for the question. And with this, I close the panel discussion. It was really nice where we discussed different things, going from questioning the fundamentals of economy to questioning if energy transition was becoming business as usual, talking about ethics, inspiration, and different levels of circular economy within the world. So thank you. I really want to thank our speakers, and well, we have a small present for you all. Thank you. Thank you very much for your really insightful presentations. And to close the event, I would like to call Aves again, who will give some final remarks before closing the event finally. Thank you.
So at the end, at the end of this panel discussion, I would like to just thank our guest speakers, our organization team who work days and nights to make this event successful, our sponsors, Go Green Office, our partner, EHV Innovation Café, and of course this beautiful audience. Without you, it wouldn't be possible to have this event. So I hope that you all learned quite a lot, just like me today. And I would just like to conclude with my final remark about today's event is that circular economy is indeed a great idea, and it's a great concept. But it's not about ideas. It's about making ideas happen. And to transition to a more sustainable world, renewable energies are required. But the most important are the human energies of empathy, honesty, and integrity. So we all have a role to play in our society in supporting the transition towards a more sustainable world. What we need is right information, right people, and also right solutions at hand in order to make this big transition of circular economy. So thank you very much for your attention, and have a nice evening. Now you can have a drinks break. You guys can also... Never mind. Yeah, I forgot the community.